Yo ho ho everybody, welcome to the FPL show, keeping you up to date with the fast-moving world of Fantasy Premier League, where, for example, we now have Harry Kane scoring goals in August. And Arsenal players that are worth buying.
Really?
Yes,
Are you sure? Interesting. Well, today we'll be getting the tips from Holly Shand from Fantasy Football Community and the editor of Fantasy Football Scout, David Monday. So much to cover in today's show.
Looking forward to hearing from them. Now, the big star of last weekend on the field was, of course, Sergio Aguero. Last season, only 3 players were able to get game weeks in which they netted over 20 points. He was one of them, and he's gone and done it again. 20 points with that hat-trick against Huddersfield. What an extraordinary performance it was from him. The other big scorer last week was Neil Etheridge, the Cardiff keeper, who got himself 16 points. Incredible stat about Neil. Do you know that in every single Premier League game he's ever played in, ever in his life, he has saved a penalty?
Really? How many games is that?
2.
All right. And also, he's the first Filipino to play in the Premier League as well.
That's so true.
Go on, the Filipinos. Well, we know Aguero was all about the points in game week 2, but it was actually his teammate, Gabriel Jesus, that had the most shots on target. In fact, he had more shots on target than any other player in game week 2. In terms of chances created, David Silva and Gylfi Sigurdsson created the most in the game week, and that was 6 apiece.
Most transferred in player this week has been Richarlison of Everton after his 3 goals in 2 games so far.
Just keep getting him in.
In the last 5 days alone, 600,000 managers have brought him into their squad. Most transferred out for the second week in a row. Poor old Kevin De Bruyne.
Well, Aguero, all the points in game week 2 were for him, and he is the second most transferred in player. So with that in mind, it's understandable he's this week's hot topic.
All right then, Sergio Aguero, 500,000 managers, an army of fancy bosses, bringing him in this week. Holly, have you got him in your team?
Yes, I captained him last week, so I was very happy.
Excellent. 40 fat points.
With it. Well, there were so many rumours he was going to be dropped. People were wondering whether to keep him, whether to get rid of him. But you've got to have him in your team now, especially after last week. Is he a must-have?
Yes, definitely. Pep's comments after the game were really positive about him, and he's got 6 really good fixtures coming up, so if you missed the boat on game week 2, you can still get him in for that really good run.
Jump on that ship before it heads over the horizon. And if you have him in your team, I mean, he got us 40 points last week. Do you have to give him the armband now, David?
I don't think so. Not every week. When you, for example, I've got Aguero and I've got Salah. This particular week, I prefer Salah's fixture. So I don't think you have to necessarily captain him. Having Salah and Aguero is a good way to go. Obviously, this most recent week, that's 49 points for you, so don't say no to that.
It was painful last week, though. 880,000 managers captained Aguero. They got the double of those 20 points, 40 points for him. Imagine not having him in your team.
Imagine triple captaining him.
Imagine triple captaining him. Other forward options, though. Let's take a look at these, because, of course, we do have these other big hitters up front. Harry Kane, Romelu Lukaku, and Firmino. Now we know Kane can score in August as well. Should we get him in our teams? How do we get them both?
It's good to see Kane back on the score sheet. Personally, I'm waiting for him to score a few goals and really explode like he did last season. With the fixtures that he's got coming up against Manchester United and Liverpool, I'd maybe hold off for another couple of weeks.
Right. What about the other options there, though? Because Lukaku and Firmino, unlike, say, Sergio Aguero at Man City, you know they're going to start. Do they represent, especially with those slightly lower price tags, do they represent a better option?
At the moment, I'd say no. I think the interesting thing about Aguero is that, as you were mentioning, like, a lot of the goals do go through him when he does play. Yes, of course, there is that rotation risk, but for all of these strikers, you can kind of look for alternatives elsewhere. So Kane's obviously got Ali at Spurs. Pogba's taking penalties at Manchester United, for example. And, you know, if you've got some Liverpool players and you want 2 attacking players and 1 defender, you probably have Salah and Mane instead of Firmino. So while those players probably more assured of starts, Aguero is kind of the more talismanic figure for Manchester.
Do you think then that this year's Liverpool will see less involvement from Firmino in the actual goals, in actually scoring?
He's a little bit behind Salah and Mane on shots at the moment, but he's the centre forward in a team that's going to score a lot of goals this season. So I think later in the season there may become a time when we're going to need him. But when Salah and Mane are producing so well and Liverpool keeping clean sheets, your kind of allocation of 3 players, it's hard to fit him in right now.
Firmino, the second most transferred out player of this game week, just behind Kevin De Bruyne, who, of course, is injured. Are you surprised by that?
I think managers are losing patience, and Salah and Mane are playing a lot further forward, even though Firmino is the false nine.
Yeah.
So I can see why people are making the switch, especially when there's some budget forward options emerging as well.
Yeah, I've ditched him this week, actually.
Have you?
Yeah, I'm one of those 800,000. All right, well, another forward who's been creating quite a buzz of late, mind you, he does play for the Hornets, is Troy Deeney, who's up with Sergio Aguero in the Game Week 2 Dream Team.
Yeah, he is. That's because he got 12 points, the Watford captain, and he says that there's more to come.
I am this year. I have never been before, but yeah, I won't say I'm arrogant, but I've got confidence. I've done enough work to cause some havoc this year. Mo was in there, yeah, definitely was in there. Who else did I have? I had De Bruyne at early doors, and Sterling got me a lot of points last year. So yeah, I'm buzzing with that. Probably try and go similar again. Wild card, I'd say Pereira. He's nice for the assist and goal as well. Hughesy, again, Will Hughes, and he's cheap as well, so that's always a positive.
Looking forward, there are so many good defenders to be getting into our fantasy Premier League teams, and none more so than Marcos Alonso. Now, many were put off this season by Marcos Alonso because of his new position at Chelsea under new management. But if we take a look at these stats, we can see he's actually even more attacking in a back four. In the 2017-18 season, you can see he created a chance every 84 minutes. This season, he's created a chance every 60 minutes. Last season, a shot every 44 minutes, but this season, a shot every 30 minutes. I mean, if you haven't got him in your team, you're surely going to be wanting to get him in ASAP, Polly.
Definitely. I'm a bit gutted that I didn't have him in from the start, but managing those stats against Huddersfield and then Arsenal, it looks like he can be as good as last season, if not better.
And you were pointing out, he's cheaper than last year.
Yeah, last season he started off at 7 million, so even with that price rise to 6.6, it's still a really strong option.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The stats going forward are great. I mean, he's already got 2 assists, which is as many as he got in the whole of the last campaign. He's already got a goal as well. He might, though, be losing out on a few clean sheet points, would you say, David, this season?
I think so. When you compare him with some of the other premium defenders like Robertson and Mendy, they are in teams that we can be a little bit more confident of clean sheets. Yeah, I think if you're going to pay that much money for a defender like Alonso, you probably want to see a little bit more defensively, but Chelsea's fixtures are so good that I think the clean sheets, there will be clean sheets there.
Well, you mentioned Mendy and Robertson. So many good options at the back for us to get points from this season, particularly the 3 that we've mentioned already. But with Mendy, he's 0.4 million cheaper than Alonso, and he's actually more owned than him. Do you prefer him over Alonso, or is it hard to choose?
Oh, no, I definitely prefer Mendy. As you mentioned, he's cheaper. He's got a better defence in terms of who else he plays with, and he's been very involved as well. Some people have said he could be this season's Alonso, and I think I agree with that. He's touched the ball in the final third more than any other defender, so he's the one to go for, I think.
The way he and Aguero were combining last week against Huddersfield was absolutely spectacular. Robertson, you've said, is one of your must-haves for Liverpool. Why him and not, say, Alexander-Arnold?
So the thing with Robertson is that he's received more passes than any other defender in the league, which tells you that he's like the outlet for Liverpool. So Trent Alexander-Arnold was putting a lot of crosses, but Liverpool clearly functioning very much through Robertson on that left flank, and I think his delivery is a little bit better than Alexander-Arnold's, and he tends to pick up more assists.
And Holly, we saw what Kieran Trippier did in the summer in the World Cup with England, particularly with those set pieces, and he did it again for Spurs at the weekend, scoring a beautiful free kick. Are you saying he's essential for our teams at the back as well? How are we going to fit all these guys in?
Maybe not essential just yet, but he did perform really well, and it's great that he's managed to get those set pieces off the back of the World Cup. It does, though, limit Eriksen's returns going forward, so that's something to keep an eye on.
Because if Kieran Trippier is going to be banging in free kicks like he did last weekend,
where are the points coming from for Eriksen?
That's a big question, isn't it? Well, much to think about then. Let's have a quick look at the fixtures coming up in Game Week 3 of this Premier League season. Jules, the early game, Saturday lunchtime, sees the defending Premier League champions Manchester City visiting the team that won the championship last year, Wolves. Now, 3 reasons that there might be a bit of an upset here.
Oh, okay.
First of all, in the last 2 seasons when the reigning Premier League champion has visited the side that won the championship, they have lost each time.
Okay.
Secondly, Wolves, you'll recall, actually played Man City in the League Cup last year and gave them a real game. It was 0-0, but then it went to penalties and they lost, but it was 0-0 in regulation time. The third reason, and perhaps most importantly of all, you dreamt the other night that Wolves beat them.
I
Jules
did indeed.
dreamt it, everybody.
But don't blame me if I get it wrong. What about this game? Arsenal, West Ham, a London derby, but both teams haven't started the season well at all, both without a point so far. However, Arsenal did win this fixture 4-1 back in April, and Lacazette got 2 of those goals. And despite the fact that Mesut Ozil has faced a bit of criticism lately, he does like playing against West Ham, James. Listen to this. He's got 3 goals and 2 assists in his last 4 matches against them.
Wow, something to think about. He's got very low ownership, 4% ownership.
Yeah.
Wow. The late game on Saturday sees Liverpool taking on Brighton. Last 3 meetings between these 2 teams have been a 4-0 win for Liverpool, a 5-1 win for Liverpool, and a 6-1 win for Liverpool in the FA Cup. The most recent was the 4-0 in this fixture back at the end of last season, in which Mo Salah picked up his 32nd goal of the season. And David's friend Andrew Robertson picked up a whopping 18 points. That's sensational.
Oh, that is a good return, but don't write Brighton off. Remember, they did beat Manchester United last game week. And speaking of Manchester United, Spurs haven't scored in their 4 visits to Old Trafford under Mauricio Pochettino. But David De Gea isn't having the best time at the moment. Not in great form is the most owned fantasy Premier League keeper. He's in fact conceded 10 goals from the last 14 shots on target that he's faced, including against Spain, with Spain in the World Cup, and of course for Man United.
Yeah, and when De Gea starts to go, you're really in trouble.
You
are. I tell you. Right, deadline for your fancy picks, 11:30 on Saturday morning.
Yes, indeed. Time for a team talk now. We're focusing on all things Arsenal. Well, for Arsenal, they have not started too well under their new manager, Unai Emery. But for many FPL managers, Arsenal's season starts in game week 3 because take a look at their fixtures. They are looking pretty healthy for the next 6, Holly, aren't they?
Definitely. I mean, there's plenty of managers that already have Arsenal players in their team. Lacazette and Aubameyang were very popular at the start of the season.
Have you?
I've got Aubameyang in my team.
David, what about you?
I've got Lacazette.
Ooh, okay.
I'm a little bit worried about Lacazette, just simply because he hasn't played as many minutes as I was expecting. But Aubameyang, obviously, we know what he can do from the end of last season. People are a little bit put off by him. I think he's been getting sold this week because he's only touched the ball 3 times in opponent penalty boxes so far.
And he's had a couple of big misses.
And he's had a couple of big misses too. But I think that this is the kind of game where he's going to come good. West Ham, quite poor away from home. They averaged 2.21 goals away from home conceded last season. So if Arsenal are going to kickstart a great run of fixtures with some big players like this, it's going to be West Ham at home. It's worth looking at.
Do you know, Holly, 250,000 managers have sold Aubameyang since the start of the season.
Wow.
Do you think he should, like Aubameyang, start coming back now?
Potentially. I mean, if you've already got him in your team, he deserves
Like you have.
at least 1 more week with that fixture against West Ham.
Uh-huh.
A home game. I mean, last season, he tended to score well against weaker opposition, and West Ham haven't looked great so far.
No.
So you should definitely be sticking with him at least for 1 more week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, people have been getting impatient, it seems, with the Arsenal forwards. But what about getting into this Arsenal team with the midfielder Mkhitaryan, because he is a lot better value at just 7.1 million, David?
Yeah, so interestingly, he's actually matched Aubameyang for touches in the box and shots and goal attempts as well. So if you can get someone for effectively 4 million cheaper, then why not? Obviously, his goal conversion's higher too because he scored against Chelsea and Aubameyang didn't. He looked really great in that game. But he's got great value too.
The question, I think, before the start of the season was whether he was actually going to be a regular starter. But it looks like Emery is going to count on him in his starting 11.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at that front 3 and wondering how it might change, because I think it is a little bit unsettled. I think Aubameyang and Mkhitaryan are going to stay in it. I think the one you'd be worried about probably Ozil because when he came off against Chelsea, it was after a particularly poor performance. So I think Mkhitaryan's definitely going to be in that lineup for game week 3.
OK, sounds good. What about defenders? Are any Arsenal defenders worth considering, Holly?
It's difficult to imagine too many clean sheets because they've looked so poor defensively. But going forwards, the fullbacks, Bellerin and Monreal, look like really good options. Arsenal seem to be creating a lot down the wing, and particularly Bellerin. He should have got an assist last week if it wasn't for that Aubameyang miss. So it looks like assists will be coming.
Monreal was a big scorer for them last year, 5 goals in the last campaign. Of course, change of management, changed slightly of style. Do you think he's going to be a threat going forward this year?
He definitely poses that goal threat to us. At the minute, I prefer Bellerin, but certainly one or two of them might be an option in the coming weeks.
Good thing with Monreal, 0.8% ownership. So if you do get him in and he does anything, then you know that he's a good differential to have. Right, time for a quick break. In part 2, we're going to be putting your tweets to our guests today and finding out who we should be captaining for game week 3.
Right, a little bit of FPL trivia to take us to the break as we ask you, which goalkeeper in the Premier League has saved more shots than any other so far this season? We'll have the answer for you in a couple of minutes' time.